All right. Well, it has been a while.
It has.
So, welcome to Cinema Rabbit Trails episode 9. A few days ago, we watched, I almost said Justice League, Avengers. We did Justice
It's the
League last
Marvel's
time.
Justice League,
Yes.
is what it is.
Our audience is already divided now.
Yeah, okay, my bad. I didn't mean to be divisive. But so, Avengers Infinity War Part 1. Saw that the other day, yes. Your second time, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay,
yes.
cool.
So Marvel, so this has been 11 days since it's been out now at this time.
Yeah.
Maybe 11 or 12 days.
No, because it came out like a few days before last weekend. So it's been maybe 9-10 days.
Okay, well, it did break the record for the film to reach $1 billion, the quickest, 1 day before Star Wars. So it's definitely trucking very, very well to reach that 1.5 billion mark, and I'm really curious to see how long it's going to take to get to 2 billion. I mean,
too.
it's just
I think it'll get there.
it will eventually. I mean,
Yeah.
but it's just
Especially
crazy.
international markets, it'll get there. So, but so we
So
went to
spoiler alert!
Yes, big spoiler
alert! We're going to be talking about things in the movie. So if you have not seen the movie, please pause the video. We can wait. Go see the film, and we'll be back when you get back.
Yes. All right. So who does the synopsis this time?
Good
Oh,
grief!
okay. Well, I'll do my best here.
All right.
So this has been, of course, leading up for quite some time.
10 years.
If you have,
practically.
if you have followed Marvel's films and have seen some of the themes presented, especially closer to where we are now, you'll notice that Thanos has been the man behind the curtain of the events, starting back to Avengers 1, what happened with the invasion of New York. So now we're here where Thanos is now trying to pull together all the Infinity Stones, to which he has a gauntlet in order to use all that power and hopefully to own all existence, apparently. I wish I knew what every stone was. I know there was time, soul,
space,
Reality.
soul, mind, reality, and the Mind Stone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mind stone. That's right. Okay.
Yeah, six
Yeah.
stones.
So this is essentially his search for all those stones. And of course, the Avengers are here to try and prevent that, because of course they don't want to be wiped out of existence. I wouldn't want to either.
I was half expecting in the film the one-liner from Tony Stark again. It's like, if we can't defend the Earth, you can be dang sure we'll avenge it. And I was like, that's about to have to happen here, bud.
Yeah.
In
Anyway.
a very real way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Anyway, sorry. Continue.
He'll probably maybe say that in the next movie where he's like, "You can't defeat me," and he's just like, "Yeah, but we can," and says, "We'll avenge the film." Maybe we'll see.
Maybe so. So it's essentially about it. It definitely spotlights on Thanos through the film, so we get to know him as a character as well. I'll also say, just as a brief side note, I do think Thanos is one of the strongest villains that we've had, apart from maybe Killmonger in Black Panther.
Strongest as in what best character development, perhaps.
What character development?
Okay,
yeah,
just like
that we
literally,
have.
the guy is
Physical
like the most
strength, yes.
godlike character villain on the scene now.
Yeah.
Right, and Vulture was pretty good in Spider-Man, so I would kind of point to some of those.
We
can
have
get
our
into
disagreements
that,
there.
Sure.
of
Yes,
course,
Yes.
which we can discuss.
Yes.
So, but I think that would be a good summary of the film. Everything else would be more in detail.
Yeah.
I think. So primarily, he's trying to take all the stones to take over existence.
We do need to just say the very ending real quick. This is the big spoiler part, but we do need to disclose.
Oh, okay. I wasn't going to go there.
Well, just because we are going to talk about it. Like, there's some very important stuff that we can get into on the ending, but
Oh, okay.
do you want to just say, like,
Sure.
from Scarlet Witch and Vision to the actual end?
Yes.
From that on.
So at this point, Thanos has taken all of the stones, nearly all the stones. The only stone left is the Mind Stone.
Mhm.
Is that right? Which Vision has. It's in his forehead. And so Thanos is on his way to Wakanda to get it. Once he does get there, Vision tells Scarlet Witch, who they have a love interest through the film, and you'll see that through the film as you watch. But he eventually says, "Sacrifice me, please. Use your powers to destroy the Mind Stone so that Thanos doesn't get his hands on it, and so that it's critical. It's going to save the world if you do this. You know, I'll sacrifice my life for all other lives on Earth, or all existence, really, the universe. So she, long story short, she does destroy it before Thanos is able to get to them. But, as we know, one of the stones that Thanos has is a time stone. And using the time stone, he's able to turn back the time that destroyed the Mind Stone and essentially rips the Mind Stone out of Vision's head, which leaves him with all the stones. Following that, we see Thor try and stop him, which he's unsuccessful. Thanos snaps his fingers with all stones, and we see him escape. And the characters left, there are some that are reduced to ash. Also, I should have mentioned this, but Thanos is all about the idea of destroying half the population, just randomly, to provide balance in the universe.
Yeah. No discrimination.
Yes, that's right. And so some of the characters dissolve into ash.
I don't know if that makes me feel more comfortable or just like...
I don't know either, honestly. It was like he made a point of that. It's like, without discrimination, it's the only thing fair, no matter like what your status is, where you're at in life, what your position is, what power you hold.
So you're like, oh, that's kind of nice. And you're like...
It's like...
Still...
This is pretty bad. I don't know if that makes it less bad one way or the other at all. I don't think it makes a difference, but I don't know.
He had his logic, that's for sure.
Yeah.
So anyway, so you'll see half characters reduced to ash. This leaves those who are left in shock, not knowing what to do. And near the beginning of the film, you see Thanos talking about how he wants to rule over the universe and sit down, watch the sunrise on a grateful universe because of his deeds of owning all things. And that's exactly what happens at the end of the film. We see the Avengers defeated, and a victorious Thanos. So now we wait for part 2.
I have to say, I was shocked because I was thinking, okay, maybe second film, halfway he'll get all the stones or something like that.
Yeah, I didn't think it would happen that
So, I mean,
fast.
this kind of leaves us with like the whole impression, like, what happens now? Because people, literally half the universe has been wiped out. Thanos has all 6 Infinity Stones, and now he is on a distant planet just watching the sunset. And you're just like... So anyway, it's just...
Yeah, like
well, I was not...
half the Avengers and Guardians of the Galaxy combined are all dead, dissolved. It's just like, what the heck?
So, but that's good synopsis, Adam. That's really, really good.
Well done. All right.
I gotta say, about 2 or 3 years ago, I was thinking about this film, and I have to say, I called this. I was wondering whatever happened to the Red Skull.
Yes, that was a great appearance.
Because he never died. In Captain America, he just gets zapped up into space, and I'm just like, so wait, he never died. What if he came back in Infinity War? And what if he was like a major character? So I was so excited. I'm like, yes, So I kind of wish he had more of a major role, but it's also interesting. It was not played by Hugo Weave. Weave. What's his name?
It wasn't.
Apparently, I don't think it was actually.
Sure looked like him.
It looked like...
sounded like him too, though.
Just minus the German accent.
I remember... Yeah, that's my point. So that's one of my points. But I'll double check on that. But I remember reading something that it was not actually him, which I was like, huh. But I just thought it was fascinating how his whole entire purpose... Like, he was like, I wanted to get all these Infinity Stones, and now my purpose has changed to where I can only tell people about them who now seek them. But anyway... Just wanted to get that out there that I was so excited that... Because I really want to see him and Captain America go at it, because that would really be neat to see this.
Because, Red Skull is actually a fairly major character throughout the comics, I believe. He shows up a lot. He's not... he's... consistent villain.
But it would just be neat to see how the two have just grown over the years, and how their ideology and just what they know about the universe and the world and themselves has just now escalated, and now these two ideologies are once again...
Well, I don't know if there's much on Captain America's side. I mean, there's more like technology and everything, but he's still the same old school dude he always has been. Whereas Red Skull, he would be... I think that's what would make it cool, because you have the consistent hero who's still the same. He hasn't necessarily gotten more powerful one way or the other. He might maybe a little bit more capable, but...
I'm saying, I'd say he's made some decisions, because he's now not aligned with America or even S.H.I.E.L.D. anymore, and now he's kind of like his own rogue character, because he's like, I can't,
True.
I'm just have to make my own decisions now. So in a way, he has, but yeah,
But
I would
Red
agree.
Skull has like some knowledge of the stuff of the technology
Yes.
and capabilities outside the Earth, so he might be a lot more powerful. I mean, you saw him floating as opposed to walking. It's like, okay, there's something there, maybe,
Yeah.
or that's just an artistic choice by Marvel. 50-50 chance it's one way or the other. He's gotten more powerful.
Yeah.
But
We'll see.
yeah, I don't know. I don't know how mad he could. That's one thing I'd be interested to see if they actually do a character arc with Red Skull, bring him back and fight Captain America. There's
You could see he almost had like no emotion. He was just so apathetic. It seemed about.
and the fact is, like, he can't blame Captain America for losing. He grabbed the freaking stone and just disappeared. I mean, Captain America didn't really defeat Red Skull. He made a dumb decision. So I don't know how much anger he would still have toward Captain America. I mean,
just to
of
prove
course-
that he's the better man.
True,
But
he
that
could do
that
that.
probably was last only so long though.
Yeah. I think it would just be a matter of Red Skull has a new villainous plot, and Captain America finds out he's still alive, and then he's just like, well, we were enemies before, and so we're still enemies, I guess, because you're being a bad guy, and it's because we were enemies before. I'm the one responsible to take you down again, I guess. So,
Who knows?
I don't know.
I hope he comes back. All that
Yes,
to say.
I do too. So, anyway, though, I
Stick
think
a bookmark in that one.
There you go.
yeah. I was really impressed with how they did Thanos' story. I mean, I can't think of a better superhero villain than Thanos, other than like Joker, obviously from the Dark Knight trilogy. But
Which is saying something, considering
Yeah,
Thanos is. I mean, when you start getting stuff that grandiose, how do you ground that to where it's something relatable?
right,
That's a really tough thing to do. But keep going.
yeah, you're good. Well, I mean, obviously two very different villains, but
Yeah.
Joker and Thanos, and Joker is very just like you get no backstory on him. He's just a new character, and he was
don't
done
need it.
incredibly well. You don't need it, you don't. But
That's what makes it
and
creepy, too.
There's a couple. I think there's at least two different backstories to how
Yes.
Joker started. But yeah, anyway, we're not here to talk about Joker. But yeah, Thanos just like. Great backstory on him. I was actually really glad that they didn't stick with the traditional background for Thanos, at least not yet. They haven't introduced, Lady Death, who was originally his purpose for doing all this, for getting the Infinity Stones and destroying half the universe. It was just to impress.
It's
Lady
amazing
Death.
what a woman will do to a guy.
I know, right? Yeah. What are you gonna do?
Destroy half the universe? I hope not.
Yeah, I hope not. I hope I don't have to do that. So, you know.
Yeah.
I shall prove my undying love for you. Really? How are you going to do that? Never mind.
Yeah, so that's funny though, because I wonder if Lady Death is the embodiment of death and she's actually a physical being. Couldn't he have hypothetically accidentally killed Lady Death by randomly killing half the universe? Couldn't she have been a life that could have randomly been chosen by the Infinity Stone
Well, she's
algorithm?
well, she's beyond. That's the thing. Like, she's beyond life and death. That's the whole thing, and that's why like death is such a thing to her, is because she's beyond.
Okay.
Well,
Well,
beings
at
like
least
that.
to be on the mere physical matter
Yeah.
of existence.
Okay. I'll give you guys that. Still, I just thought that was kind of funny. But regardless,
Right.
they never mentioned Lady Death. At least not that I picked
The
up
only
on,
time they've
but-
ever mentioned her was in the first Avengers, where he
Right,
says
that's
that,
true.
talking about the Avengers, and his minion says to challenge them is to court death.
Right,
And
and
that's
that was
when-
kind of like a ploy. That doesn't necessarily mean they are actually referencing Lady Death, though.
Right. But it does allude to like.
It does. It definitely does.
But that's
think
that's
they'll-
all we've had. So they
Yeah.
probably could have changed.
Well, and keep
direction.
in mind, Marvel did this entire movie thing was a risk that they took because DC was killing them in the comic books. And so Marvel did movies, and then they started destroying DC in competition because these movies got so big after Iron Man 1. And so now Justice League have been trying to do the movies, and fans, obviously with the recent Justice League stuff and everything, I mean, I have my own opinion, but fans did not like it. Most of the DC movies that have come out recently since the Dark Knight trilogy, the general population has not liked. And so fans are calling on DC to really just stick to comics. That's where you're going to win. That's where you're going to stay consistent. And Marvel's doing their movie thing, but they're going to run out eventually. And they're going to have to go back to comics or something different. So we'll see. We'll see how that all plays out. But anyway, back to Thanos. I thought he was one of the best storied villains we've ever had. Definitely better than Killmonger. Killmonger was great, though. Sorry, Adam. I think he destroys Vulture. I didn't care for Vulture as a villain in Homecoming. But
Thanos destroys Vulture?
yeah, as far as
I
just
agree.
quality of villain.
Yeah, I
but-
absolutely agree.
He could have died.
True.
Anyway, sorry.
I think for me, it was hard to pick villains that were good in Marvel. Like, there have been effective villains, but there's a difference between effective and really intriguing villains.
Well, and you think about it, even you look at crimes out there and everything too. There's not a lot of good villains. There's nobody that's like, there's most of the, regardless of the comic book factor, like just people who do something bad and go to jail. They're usually not super interesting. A lot of them have the same story, to be honest, and it's or they have the same. They're all either like they have the same motivations, I guess is the best term.
You could say there's an overlap in ambitions.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's hard to, you got to give comic books a little bit of a break on villains because there's not a whole lot of interesting villains as far as how you can build them. Obviously, you have a little bit more creativity you can have whenever you have a multiverse and giant universe full of aliens and planets and different technology. You can walk all the way around, but the really the only interesting villains that we've ever had, really, that you can ever think about, are the ones who don't adhere to any sort of real human emotion: greed, jealousy, envy, lust, just like crimes of passion, basically. That's even you could call stealing money a crime of passion when you break it down, because it's a human emotion. Thanos' emotion is not what you'd really classify as a human relatable emotion of just like, this world's kind of, I've seen worlds die off. I'm just going to kill half the universe so we don't have to deal with this for another couple million years. Mm-hmm. That's his breakdown of it. Just like, the universe will be grateful for me, and I'll maintain being the most powerful being in the universe more than I was before.
But I think at its core, I think we all can relate to that to a degree, because at the end of the day, we all desire to control things in our lives. Ultimately, we wish we can control everything in our life, the people how we feel, our experiences, and some people have the ambition, like Hitler, have the ambition to take out to a far extreme where it's like, I want to control the world here.
True. And
Thanos is taking that to a further extreme where it's like, I want to control the universe. And you can see his reasoning where he said, my people on my planet were dying. There wasn't enough food to go around, and so by killing half of them indiscriminately, Gamora's planet. I know Gamora's planet. Half of them were dying, or they were all dying with because they couldn't feed themselves.
Yeah,
and so it kind of begs a really hard ethical question: if half the people are dying because there's a lack of food, is it more moral to let whoever's going to die, or kill half people indiscriminately so that the other half will live in prosperity? That was kind of the question Thanos was waging there. Do you see what I'm...
Yeah, I understand it. And from an atheistic standpoint, yeah, I might agree with you. Like, there's, atheistic standpoint, morals don't really come from a specific place other than societal standards. And so you could, if you can get enough people to agree that a societal standard should be, well, hey, we have a big starvation problem. Let's randomly pick half of the population, and let's kill them or lock them away so that they'll just die off and we don't have to actually see their faces and die, whatever your prerogative is, however you want to go about it, whether it's through abortion, euthanasia, or actually just, gun to the head, however you want to do it. It's like, okay, that's our standard because we're having a problem.
Well, it's that godlike complex, like, we will decide what is right and what is wrong.
Yeah.
And as Christians, that's the whole point where it's like, okay, we ultimately have to leave God as the one who's the control of all justice here, and that ultimate justice lies in his hands, and we can't take it into our hands. So
exactly. So
and even Thanos was moral about it. He said it was an act of mercy for him to do so.
Yeah. Well, it's like in Shawshank Redemption, and when they're all in the prison, it's like, every man here innocent. That's not the exact quote, but yeah, that's what he basically says. Just every man in prison is the most innocent man you'll ever meet. They'll all claim they didn't do it. So. Or they can justify what they did and they think they're right. So that's again I know we've said this before. That's one of the things that makes Christianity very different. Is it calls us to recognize our sin and constantly realize that we are sinners and we do wrong things, and we are supposed to hold ourselves and each other accountable for that.
Mm-hmm.
So
right. Exactly.
A quote that I like is, one of our greatest incompetence is to realize how incompetent we are. Competencies is man's inability to recognize his incompetency. Something like that. I'll find the quote and I'll post it.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah.
One
You're
other
the quote
thing,
guy.
Yeah. One thing that forget who brought it up. We wanted to talk about. I think it was you, Adam. Wanted to talk about Marvel's impact on heroes and how we view heroes in our culture today.
Yeah.
So let's talk on that subject a little bit.
Sure. So Marvel, as we know, has impacted the superhero genre in very significant ways. And the way we view these heroes too the way they present their heroes are very relatable, and so in doing so, we understand perhaps a little more of what heroism could look like on a daily basis, maybe, as opposed to maybe, again, I'm a DC fan, but I do understand that these characters can take on a godlike quality, and because of that, they can seem more distant to us. So what Marvel has done is taken some of that relatable kind of daily content that we're so familiar with, and has instilled some of it into the movies, to where, including the humor factor, has won so many over to watching Marvel. And that's changed our outlook on how we view heroes, and just especially superheroes, but also just in general what heroism is. So bouncing off of that, what do you guys think?
Yeah,
I could go on to other things.
Yeah,
right now,
you can.
What do you think?
Yeah, I think Marvel's. I think that's where you could really break down Marvel and DC in the clash. Well, I say DC. I think they both have, like, the very godlike structures of heroes and everything like that.
They can.
Yeah. I think it's interesting, though, that DC is the only one with Batman who has done more of a savior-style hero with Batman as opposed to godlike hero like every other superhero we've had.
Like Superman?
Yeah, obviously Superman. Yeah, very, very godlike. So, but yeah, Batman is more like, if you actually want to draw a biblical correlation, it would be very Christ-like. It's like, this is not the hero you expect. This is not the style you expect. This is not.
What's the
to
quote?
Quote him, not the hero Gotham.
I'm
the
the
hero
the
Gotham
world.
deserves, not the one it needs. Something like that.
Yeah.
Isn't that right? Yeah.
I love how it should have ended. He's like, I'm the hero that Gotham deserves, not the one it needs. It's kind of cool when you think about it. And Superman's like, yeah, I have no idea what that means either.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Cool quote. You got to give it that. So.
Yeah.
But yeah, just that's like the one hero we have that's very different. But yeah, I mean, I don't know what else to necessarily say there. But
I was talking with my pastor the other day, and he had an interesting thought that it's another quote that I'll share. Ironic, because we're talking about all of these heroes, this oversaturated with Marvel and DC and even anti-heroes such as Deadpool and Venom. He said, we don't know how to have heroes, which I thought was interesting. He said, we don't know how to have heroes because we honor heroes because of what a significant contribution they made, not because they are perfect. And the correlation that's going on right now is we demand people to be perfect. Like, in a way, we're looking for those saviors in our lives, people who will be the idols we can look to for everything to be right. But people aren't perfect, and you'll see this right now with Confederate soldiers being torn down off college campuses because they were on the Confederate side. And it's like, these were good men. They did good things, and they led their men bravely, and they actually had upstanding character, but they were also associated with the South, and so it's like, so does, because not everyone's perfect. I mean, we love, Abraham Lincoln, we love George Washington, but these men were not perfect. But we don't idolize Martin Luther King Jr. and these other men because they got everything right. Yeah. There's we can point out lots of flaws in our heroes that they didn't get right, but we honor them because of what they did. And I think you see that in politics right now, where everyone is constantly tearing down everybody else in politics, that it's like, yeah, we recognize nobody is perfect. And everyone's hypocritical at one point or another, and we're frustrated at it. So it's kind of like, how do we accept people are flawed we don't get them off the hook, but we accept that they're flawed, but we still honor them because they have done good work. So I feel like we've lost that, where we expect people to be perfect because that's what our Facebooks look like. Everyone looks perfect. Nothing wrong here. And then why are we surprised when scandals break out, where Bill Cosby is now under a lot of scrupulous watchful eye? So
yeah, and it's funny because people there have been some editorials that have talked about, with Bill Cosby, he was America's dad as Mr. Cosby in there, and he and people are saying like, well, this destroys all that, and it's like, no, like regardless, the character is different from the actual person who played the character, so don't associate the two, because he wasn't playing himself.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, he was a flawed man, obviously, for most of his life, it appears now, but as the character, you look at the traditionalism of that family and everything, and how good it was. The inspiration it drew for families at the time, it was fantastic, especially for black families.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a huge, just this cultural pull towards the traditional family, which has uplifted society for years. I mean, you correlate. You can talk about statistics all day long, but when you just look at the correlation between the fallout of the traditional family, where 70% within the last several decades, I mean, the black family single motherhood is up to like 70% or over that. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's actually getting better the last couple of years, thank God. But I mean, same with white families. It's not quite that bad. It's more in the I think like the 30-40% range. There's a lot of single motherhood, but just traditional families have been taking a hit in the last several decades, and it's society in multiple ways has gone down. I think that's the hidden core that not everyone wants to admit is the core. And I'm going to go to talking about the hero part again. Mm-hmm. It's really funny to me just how there was a very recent move with some of the comic books, some of the news stories or recreations of heroes, like Wonder Woman. They changed her into like a social justice warrior, third wave feminist type of hero for like one or two comic book stories, and it flopped completely. And they did the same with some of the other male heroes and stuff like that. And it's like superheroes don't work unless like what people have classified as toxic masculinity. When it comes to male heroes, the ones that work are the ones that have like they're strong. They have a strong moral significance as well. They're strong moral standing. They know their boundaries. They're challenged constantly. They're very on a visual standpoint, they're very masculine men, most of the time at least. There are some exceptions. You could say like Spider-Man is one that's not, I mean, he's a young kid. But even then, as you follow Spider-Man's
It's a coming-of-age story, though.
Yeah, it's a coming-of-age story.
Which is part of the masculine journey.
Exactly, yeah. It is a masculine journey. And so it just doesn't work any other way. And superheroes have made billions upon billions, or if not trillions of dollars.
Marvel's now up to $15.5 billion last time I checked with all their films. So it's quite an impact there.
Yes. So they can do whatever they want at this point.
Yeah.
And on your point with the breakdown of traditional families, that's interesting, because it seems with our advancements in this age, some of it is due to the fact that we can build an ideal world for ourselves, each individuals. And in that sense, we can all be like Thanos in some way, in which we feel like we could build this suitable world for ourselves that's isolated. Now, we don't see it as isolated, but the ways in which we respond to others, and how we're distracted, and how we push away those who are irritating to us, or those who don't suit our worldview, or these things like that. This is us creating our own isolation chambers, so that ideal world can still be preserved in some way. And so much like, I mean, that's you could say that's why we relate to Thanos in some ways, because his desire to reach an ideal world that he can control. And we talked about our control issues and how our desire for control, and that's part of it. So ideals and control.
Well, and that's the interesting thing about we're all looking for this ideal utopia, and you've talked about this a lot with a lot of more liberal ideologies where it's like not even wanting to have a conversation regarding like, let's talk about our different points of view because you're beneath me. And you've mentioned that before. But I think that's what, from a Christian worldview, we have to understand that there is no utopia to achieve.
Yeah.
That is like, ultimately, that
utopia is heaven.
That's, yeah, but I'm saying ultimately this is the story of Babel all over again, where it's like we will achieve godhood. Yeah. We will achieve success on our own terms. And when we try to do that, we see the terrible consequences that come as a result of that, where people will die. And it's not that it's evil, yes, but it's necessary, and so terrible things are done in the name of necessity. And that's, it's pragmatism at its core. So as Christians, we have to recognize that even, it's not our job to create God's kingdom and establish the kingdom here on earth. This is Christ working through everyone's hearts, and at the end of the day, it's Christ who establishes that kingdom.
Sorry, I was thinking of the if you guys see Master and Commander, they have the two
I need
weevils.
To see this.
There's a quick scene. They have two weevils on the table, and they're all like, they're eating and drinking, and they're with the captain and everything. And the captain asks one of his best friends a question. It's like, between these two weevils in a fight, who would you choose? It's like, okay, he chooses the one that seems to be a little bit bigger, and he starts laughing. He's like, don't you know that one's always supposed to pick the lesser of two weevils? It's like, puns! Russell Crowe and his terrible puns. I love it.
Gosh.
Man. So, sorry, that just reminded me of it. I had to say it.
Anyway, that's just to say is to create this utopia, and I think we try to do that all the time with politics. People say you can't legislate morality. You kind of do, because when we write laws, and you guys can disagree with me on this, when we write laws, we are actually choosing what we value. So like, for example, law in Tennessee is if there's a police officer pulled off on the side of the road, by law, you are required to pull over to the next available lane because police officers have been killed because of passing vehicles. So we are making a moral judgment call that preserving police officers and also not damaging, police equipment is valuable. So that ethos is demanding that we put that into a law. So in a sense, we are legislating morality, and that is kind of everyone's moral responsibility is morality will we legislate?
Yeah, I mean, every country does it. The difference is that the U.S. actually was the first country to do it off of Judeo-Christian values.
It also has to do with regulation too.
Oh yeah.
Just simply, not necessarily moral or value oriented, but just simply we are trying to provide a balance here that will be effective for a nation or a system. Mm-hmm. So,
this is just a thought. I'm just thinking about that because I've always heard that America is built on Judeo-Christian values, but I think of countries like Germany and England, which became very predominantly Christian, specifically Protestant, Catholic and then Protestant at some points of time. So they did have some Christian ideals, but I guess the country wasn't built from its foundations.
Talking about before Nazi Germany?
Well, actually, ironically, Germany was predominantly Christian during that time. Yeah. And Hitler even talks about how he said it is he talks about how frustrating it was that Germany was so predominantly Christian, because he said you have to twist so much, because one of the biggest virtues of Christianity is humility. Not this side, because if it was Islam, there could be the sense of pride and significance and effort, or some other religion. But he said with Christianity, it's difficult because you have to twist it so much. And that was the hard part about the Germans. And I think that's also, as in America, we need to be very careful, is it was predominantly Christian. Yeah. But it was the silent majority, and they did nothing.
I mean, that's what we saw with our recent presidential election. It was the silent majority that actually won. And I always like to, when it comes to silent majorities, I always like to quote William Shakespeare, who said, the empty vessel screams the loudest. It's so true. I mean, it's when I think of back whenever I was a kid, and I'll moment of honesty here and openness. I did cheat some growing up in a couple of grades. I was homeschooled, so it was a little too easy. I gotta give it that qualifier, but yeah. Anyway,
don't compare cheating with homeschooling.
Yes, that's.
The way you worded that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't mean to compare that, but
I homeschool, therefore I cheat.
Right. Yes. No, that's not the correlation I'm drawing here. My older brother definitely did not. He was homeschooled too, at least as far as I know. Anyway, I'm gonna
Try to transition out of that.
Yeah,
one.
I got to transition out of that. That wasn't a rabbit trail. That was a rabbit hole I just dug myself into. Okay.
Come back to the light, Jerry.
Coming back to the light.
Stop pulling jellyfish or shellfish out of the ocean. What is it?
Right. Yeah, you had it.
I don't know if that correlates to what I just said. Anyway.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just...
it's a secret code word we've been
Anyway,
using for
okay.
certain
So,
things.
this kid I knew cheated whenever he was growing up. I'll put it that way. And he was always obsessed with... whenever I was cheating, I was always obsessed with trying to find one of my brothers guilty of cheating or something wrong. I was so obsessed with that, and I was loud about it. I think that correlates a lot whenever someone is loud about, like, you're like, you appear to be doing something wrong, or you're trying to find someone else is wrong, or you're accusing someone of doing something wrong, outside of like a courtroom type of scenario. There's a
This
good
sounds like
chance,
what Trump and Hillary just back and forth
Kinda.
accusing each other of
a
collusions with
little
the Russians,
bit.
and I'm like,
It's like
I'm pretty sure both of you have been doing this. You're just trying to convince the other that they were doing it worse.
kind of, or at least done something along the same lines. Maybe not that specific.
They're trying to justify themselves by condemning the other person.
Exactly. Yes. Yeah. And I think it happens a lot. And I don't think that's always the case with people who are loud about their opinions or what they are accusing other people of. But there's definitely a good chance of it. And I just think people who tend to be empty. I mean, there's actually statistics on this. The conservatives, who tend to be the silent majority, generally are statistically happier in where they're at in life. Whereas it tends to be the opposite with liberals. And again, this is not universal. This is like, a couple of dozen percentage points here, but still, there is a very definite correlation between leftist media and everything. It's very left-oriented media world we tend to live in. Both in Hollywood and music and the actual news itself, it tends to be more on the liberal side, and it tends to be very, very loud and in your faces, like, you have to believe this. This is obvious that this is real, and it's been that way a long time. Just the empty vessel seems to scream the loudest. So I thought that was a very interesting correlation to see. And it's been consistent. Like the book I'm reading now by Thomas Sowell, Vision of the Anointed, great book. It is, yes. If you want to do some, yes, it is a fantastic book. And just Thomas Sowell is an amazing thinker. But this was written in
such a pretty book too. It's so elegant and like, yeah.
Anyway. Well, and it's called The Vision of the Anointed. It sounds very spiritual when it's not. It's very statistical, and the Anointed is
it's
actually
not spiritual at all.
It's really not, which is funny. But the Anointed is what he calls the left. He's classifying the left as anointed because they tend to anoint themselves the moral superiors, and therefore everything they say, if you don't agree with them, then you are morally you're an inferior person. And you're guilty of something.
Could that also just be human nature? Because, like, there's conservatives who would probably
completely agree. Yeah. I completely agree. He points that out, too.
Okay.
But, I mean, he's
just to be fair.
Yes. To be fair. There are definitely conservatives that do that as well. And I've probably been guilty of it.
And there's even some Christians. There's some Christians who have that ideology, too, where it's like, we do believe we have the truth, but... Like I said, this is nothing to be boastful about. In fact, we should be approaching this with humility because you're a sinner, I'm a sinner. There is no pride in that where it's like, hey, we are all sinners saved by the grace of God. Yep. I have nothing to stand on except God's grace. And so that's true. Anyway,
back to what he's saying. This was written in 95, and he talks about statistics going all the way back to early 60s, and the statistics are the same for conservative to liberal as far as just what the statistical joyfulness or happiness, I should say, in their current situation tends to be. Conservatives tend to be happier in their current situation. Liberals tend to be unhappy, and they also tend to be louder about what their moral obligation they give to everybody should be.
Okay, so with moral obligation, like with Thanos, he had this entitlement.
Way to bring it back.
Yes.
Of why, why was he the one destined to take over the universe? In other words, it's kind of a question and an answer.
Himself.
He anointed himself, but notice that for him, whoever held the power, had the power. That was his point. Is
Well,
when he had the power here, that means he had ownership over all things.
Well, because remember at the very beginning, they made an interesting point where one of his sidekicks saying, Thanos, we're about to embark on a moment here. No being has held 2 Infinity Stones at once.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So, in a sense, Thanos was one of the only ones who could make that decision because, Star-Lord, he could barely hold on to 1. Thanos is holding all 6.
Yeah.
And, of course, he's got the gauntlet to help him do that, but that's not a decision everyone could have made.
True.
That's right.
But,
exactly. So that gave him power, but it would you say that would point to the destiny, but also just the power of the individual too? Kind of like speaking about kind of a commentary on us and how we like to hold the power in our own hands.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like what we were talking about, control and all of that, but also sense of which why was he the one in power? Why was he the one in control?
So what's the question?
I had somewhere where I was right.
I think I kind of see where you're going. I'd like to draw a line, but I think
can't remember.
I don't know. I wonder if that's just God at work, but I think there's a tendency for and again, not universal, not 100% of the time, maybe even only half the time, but there seems to be somewhat of a tendency of evil people or people with let's just say less
more concerned about themselves.
Yeah, maybe that's a better term for it, or just fewer morals or warped morals in some sense, or just different things. But yeah, we'll just say higher views of themselves, maybe at least, tend to be in positions of or have the ability to get into positions of more power. I don't know if that's just I don't know. I mean, I just think of like Hitler. He had just because of some random things that happened during World War I to him, like the mustard gas and everything, he had this voice that just became commanding and just thrilling and awe-inspiring. And it was, and that and many other fairly random factors, along with his own drive, he just became the Fuhrer. I mean, he just became that persona of the Fuhrer and just had this authority over people. And really, when you actually what they break it down to is, the Nazi Germany, we tend to like harp on Germany for World War II. It was about like 20-25% actually really only seemed to really agree with everything that he was doing. He had convinced about, which is still a significant number, 20% of the population of a country, even one, like, it's not a huge country, but, decent sized country is Germany. It's a lot of people to agree with everything the Fuhrer is saying, minus the actual murder of the Jews and the way they were doing it.
Well, a lot of that was under the radar too. So
exactly, yeah, that was under the radar, but still saying that the Jews were inferior. I mean,
I would quickly argue, because when I was in Germany, that was something that was embedded almost in the culture.
Really?
Even in Martin Luther's day, there was this Semitism is always this, it's prejudice towards the Jews, right?
Yeah.
Semitism. There was even, you go to some of the cathedrals even.
Or anti-Semitism.
Anti-Semitism, thank you. There is paintings and sculptures depicting the persecution and the belittlement of the Jewish people.
Really?
So this was embedded in the culture for hundreds of years, and so really it just came to the forefront. One of the things came to the forefront. And I believe the understanding is these were Christ killers. These are the ones who killed Jesus, the Messiah, Son of God. And so therefore these were the terrible people that must be punished, which ironically Jesus was Jewish. So
I've never heard that.
Yeah, that was, I've seen, that's the crazy thing. Like, we'd be in cathedrals and he said, "Hey David," my producer was like, "Hey David, look at that sculpture." And I'd look up and there was just little on the edge of one of these our former cathedrals was it was depicting a Jewish man, and then it had like pigs right around him, just of course, because the Jewish people, Middle Easterns, don't eat pork or meat,
right.
And so it was a huge insult. So yeah, that was just part of the culture, part of the tradition. And so the question of were Jews even human was even up for debate. And so this was something that was, Hitler knew the temperament of his people, and I think that was the thing. He knew how to ride, because they just came out of World War II or World War I, and they were depressed, hopeless.
Oh, yeah.
Here comes a voice out of the darkness that says, "Hey, I will give you hope. I will give you your pride back." And considerably, taking away the horrible things Hitler did, he turned Germany into a powerhouse in 20 years. It's remarkable. So, I mean, he gave people hope. It was just very, very toxic hope because...
Yeah. Well, yeah, I got to... When you look at the broad scope of history, yes, Hitler is one of the greatest evils the Earth has ever seen. But you got to give the U.S. and some of the some of the Allied countries in World War I some of the blame a little bit because they just deserted Germany and made them pay for so much of World War I in the aftermath that it just decimated the entire country financially and domestically, and it was just I mean, of course they were looking for a savior, literally. Yeah. In a very Hitler was in a very spiritual sense their savior.
Yeah.
So you can't blame it.
Because also there was, I remember doing some reading about this and how there was this idea of the savior figure, the father figure of Germany. It wasn't supposed to be like, Christ, but it was they were looking towards this father figure, and Hitler really, stepped into that role. And I forget what the title was, but it had the title of Wolf in it. I'll find out what the title is. But it was interesting how Hitler really played on that role, and therefore it really just romanticized the people of Germany. But anyway, we're
all right. Good.
We're going.
So I'm sorry for leading off that way, but I do think that was pretty informative. So thank you guys.
Yes.
On this point, I would say. So, what are some of the highlights? What is something that you like about the film, and maybe something you can critique about it?
Okay.
Ooh, good question, because that'll probably be good to wrap up. And then...
Yeah, we've got about 10 minutes.
Oh, perfect.
Need to wrap up. Yeah, so we got a little time, but
goodie.
Yeah, we went on a big rabbit trail there. History lesson for everybody. That was cool.
It's like a rabbit time machine.
Yeah, a little bit. All right, so David, why don't you start us off? Something you liked and something you'd want to critique about the film.
Okay. I'll start with my critique first. One of my big critiques was I was actually amazed how much they killed off people. Like Marvel has killed only person we killed is Agent Coulson in 10 years in Marvel film history, and then we are just killing people left and right. I mean, there goes Loki, Gamora, and then you start having all these other people dying. But what my concern is we actually didn't kill off the two people we thought were going to die, which was Captain America and Iron Man. So I'll say these two things, and I'll kind of give my critique. My concern was with, Thanos killing everybody that he did, who really can be dead? Because two people they killed off was Black Panther and Spider-Man. There is no way these two people are going to die. Disney will not allow it. They have too much money to be made off of these people. So my critique was how do we know who's really dead? I mean, Loki is pretty much dead because they really try to emphasize that. But I was just so... What how does it would mean more? It would have more meaning to me if Iron Man would have died. That wow, there are real stakes in this film. But as I'm thinking about it, maybe with the second one, it will have more meaning because it will be neat to see if Captain America, Iron Man, and these major people die. Kind of as a transition to the next, superhero league. That might be one thing, but that was just my one thing for me. It was just there being meaningful deaths, because now we have to explain, they died, but they're not really dead, and if these people aren't really dead, then why can't these people be really dead? So that was one critique for me. It was just meaningful deaths.
Yeah.
Something that I liked, I thought it was pretty well paced, actually, just because there's a lot going on, and you're trying to juggle several different conflicts and battles at the same time. So I thought they actually did a really nice job with this Iron Spider-Man suit, which I was very skeptical at first because that's not what the Iron Spider-Man suit looks like. But they actually did a nice job with it, so yes, I was kind of happy with it. Wish I would have seen more of it, but can't think of anything major. Oh, like I said, I did like when Scarlet Witch does kill Vision. That sounds really morbid, but I like the scene that she really made a hard choice.
It was very impactful.
Yeah, she made a hard choice to kill the person that she loved, and even when she made that hard choice, Thanos almost in a slap in the face undid her choice and killed him anyway. Yeah, and I was just like, wow, that had some harsh. That had some real harsh. Had some teeth to it. So yeah. And one last thing.
We got time.
Yeah, I also I thought it was interesting how Banner was trying to get Hulk to come out, and Hulk was like, no, and he's like, what do you mean no? But I thought it was cool because that's almost a good arc for Banner, because in Thor Ragnarok there was always this notion that Banner can't do anything. We need the Hulk. Yeah. You're just the vessel for the Hulk. So it was actually neat to see how Banner was like, fine, I'll do it myself. And he takes down one of the children of Thanos and the Hulkbuster. And so that's kind of cool that he kind of has this new arc that, hey, yeah, he is a capable person, even without the Hulk. Now with the Hulk, what could he do now? So
yeah.
But I digress.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I guess keep it brief.
Thanks.
First of all, a praise would be, first of all, the pacing. Pacing was well done. I thought, considering the scale of the film, they definitely kept it nice and tight.
I have already pre-ordered the film
for good reason.
We'll be here when it comes in.
Yes.
I also appreciated the variety and the different worlds that were introduced. You even had a great Peter Dinklage kind of a cameo with his character of being the forger of Thanos' gauntlet.
That was good.
That whole character was great.
That was awesome.
As far as critiques, I would say some of the characters became more like caricatures. Like they just seemed...
Caricatures. Define that word for me, please.
Like a shadowy image of themselves. Or like kind of like a silhouette.
Basically, they're an idea in a body, and you just move them. Like they're a piece. They're
device.
A chess piece, basically.
A plot device, basically.
Yes. Exactly.
Okay.
And some of the characters fell into that.
Oh, gotcha.
I understand they didn't have a lot of time to work on some of the characters, but they could have changed that with some characters. I won't go into depth to that, but they could have done a little differently. My other critique would just be Star-Lord. Star-Lord was a weak character in this one. It started off interesting with his leadership really being questioned with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and instead of building that, they really just made him a laughable character. He made a really big mistake in the middle of the film. Now we don't know, because there is that sense in which Doctor Strange was looking at the many different possibilities of the outcomes, and I don't know if Star-Lord's mistake actually might have played a part in possibly rescuing them somehow. I don't know.
I was thinking through this after, because we had talked about this a little bit before the show, and it was I was thinking about it because we just had Guardians of the Galaxy 2 as well, where he found his dad. His biological dad turned evil. He had to kill his dad, and then he realizes that his kidnapper's name, the blue guy in Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yondu.
Yondu, thank you. You were Yondu.
I'm there, Papa Joe.
Yeah, that was great.
Best slide ever.
Yes. But yeah, where Yondu kind of turns into, oh, you've kind of been my father figure this whole time then, and while he's dying. And so like we've had two dads that have died within hours of each other and really minutes of each other, and now he's finally got this relationship with Gamora that's flourishing, as we see in Infinity Wars, and now she's dead. So yes, he was kind of flat character wise in this film. But I don't have to give him quite that much of a beef for making that decision to just like go all out on Thanos in the worst possible spot as he's learning that he killed Gamora, because he's
got nothing left.
He's got nothing left. I mean, yes, he has the rest of the Guardians of the Galaxy, but they're friends. Whereas Gamora was like the one person he actually loved. Like there's been some good amount of time between Galaxy 2 and Infinity War. And so there's been some time for that relationship to really develop and them to get a good, like almost husband-wife dynamic going, or at least very significant relationship going. And now she dies. And I'd probably be about the same way. I don't know how much of my sanity I'd have left if I lost my if I was kidnapped from my mom who had just died in front of me, and then I've been thrown around the universe for so many times. I find my biological dad. He turns bad. I have to kill him, and then minutes later, I realize, oh, the guy who kidnapped me, he's kind of been my dad this whole time. Well, now he's dead. Now I've got one person left in my life that feels like family, and yeah.
This sounds so psychotic outside of Marvel context.
A little bit.
So basically,
I'm just like, I'd be a little violent too if I found out the one person left in my world that I love died.
Right. So I certainly wouldn't call him a flat character. I just think the decisions that he made in the film, and even how he was written, was not that great. think they could have written him a little better for the film, instead of making him so much of a comedic figure to become a joke himself. Anyway, so what were your critiques and your praises?
Well, my one praise that we haven't discussed, and we can discuss it maybe a little bit, we've got a few more minutes, but the music.
Oh, yeah.
Music was great. I mean, you had really only in the beginning when like Captain America first shows up and things like that, you get like the original Avengers theme going. But the rest of the movie, they took some good cues from I think them doing the Star Wars movies, Disney being involved in the new Star Wars movies. They got some good soundtrack work going that was very very John Williams-y. Who was it? Alex Silvestri or Alex Silvestri? Yeah, he did the music for this, and he's always been good at themes, and I think he did a very, very good job with this one. I already looked at the soundtrack on iTunes, and like there's several tracks that are blowing up off there, and I was listening to them. It's like they're outside of the film, even they're just like, oh, they're recognizable. I know what this part is too. Like they're memorable visually. They're memorable, which we haven't had much, I think, in a while.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, for the Marvel film, it definitely gave it gave it a sense of scale.
It like really did. Really
big
It
sound.
really did. Very, very good.
I agree.
And yeah. So I got to give it that giant praise. Biggest critique. I don't know. Actually, I have to give it one more praise before I do my critique. Sorry. I'm actually very glad that they kept both Captain America and Iron Man alive, depending on what they do in the next one.
Right.
Because I think we could see something really cool. I say cool. Something unique with Captain America. Obviously, I think Tony Stark, it's going to be just like pure righteous revenge.
Because if he goes back to Earth and Pepper's gone,
yeah, that's going to be even worse.
He's gonna be going all out on Thanos.
It's like this. Yeah, this is
personal.
Yes, this is personal. And I think I told you this, but whenever he and Thanos were fighting, Iron Man and Thanos were fighting, and like he scratches him, just in my mind, I'm going, "Do you bleed?" It's like. Just like, yes. I really wanted that line just as a little, basically a middle finger to DC at that point, but still. Anyway.
He's destroying our life. Might as well take DC too.
I guess. Might as well take him down with you. But, well, Marvel definitely didn't go down with this film. But okay, I think it'd be really interesting to see what if Captain America goes dark? Like, we see a pure, wrathful, dark side to Captain America for the first time ever. In Infinity War 2. I think it's definitely possible. Because he's usually just like the very calm, but really like he's weirdly calculated as far as like he's very quick.
He's very collective.
Very collective, yes.
Very
yes,
reserved.
he's the guy you want leading the charge in a fight because he's quick on his feet. And he doesn't get distracted by an explosion right next to you or anything. He's very calm and collected. But to see him go just crack, and we see him go more all out than we've already seen him go all out, and with just like a dark vengeance about him, that'd be interesting and a very interesting arc. I think that'd be cool to see, honestly.
If they did a spinoff at a later time, probably at this point, I think we're nearing the end of his journey, though.
I think so too.
Very much so.
And that's why I was surprised they didn't kill him off, because logistically his contract is up with this film.
So if they did switch to that would be really interesting.
Well, the theory is winner Bucky's would take up the shield and become Captain America. So Bucky would definitely have a more darker persona of the Captain, but time will tell. Yeah, I mean, this second film will be very revealing with how they choose to end Iron Man and Captain America, because there would be, I think there's a lot of potential for a meaningful ending, but go ahead and finish your thought.
So my one critique, the only character that really to me doesn't make sense that they killed and was this Tom Holland's character, Spider-Man. That's my really biggest critique. Besides some of the ones you guys have mentioned, I can definitely empathize with those too. But yeah, it was and as well, not just the fact that they killed him at the end of the film but also that they didn't do much of a story arc with him. As far as him potentially being a leader. Like, they might have toyed with it as far as like him calling out, it's like, hey, Mr. Stark, do you remember that really old movie Alien? And it's like, okay, so that was a cool plan, but that didn't feel like a leader move. Like, that wasn't
a suggestion.
Right, it was a suggestion.
Call.
Yeah, exactly. There wasn't any leadership development there. So And I feel like there's something that needs to happen there, because I think Spider-Man could be a very cool arc to see if we get enough of him in a multi-movie, multi-Avengers arc or Marvel arc, coming-of-age story as he takes up the reins of Tony Stark, because that's what Tony Stark wanted him to be. He was like, he's trying to be a father figure.
I love how he's stumbling through this whole fatherhood thing. He's like, hey, I did this, but it didn't work. But hey, it worked out, right? Right. He's like, hey, I did good at this whole like dad thing, right?
That was really good though, yeah. But yeah, so I don't get that, and then how they're gonna do something because with what we think might happen where Iron Man dies in Infinity War 2. Now we don't have a father figure for Spider-Man to grow up to or to aspire to and get trained by.
Well, on that point, I think they should have flipped. Like, one thought was, I thought they should have flipped it where Stark should have died, and as he's dying, instead of Peter being the one saying, "I don't want to go, Mr. Stark. I don't want to go, Mr. Stark," Tony's the one dying in Peter's arms, and Peter's like, "Please don't go, Mr. Stark. Please don't go, Mr. Stark."
Because that would have been so traumatic, because that's a recreation of Uncle Ben dying.
Yeah, and then that's when Stark is telling him, with great power comes great responsibility.
Not that again.
Oh, it always has to,
something.
It always has to bubble up again.
Something.
You do realize how cheesy that would have been, though, right?
No.
That would have ruined
something.
everything.
No. But I'm saying something that he's passing on to Peter that's going to mark him for the rest of his life.
Yeah.
Because here is his mentor, and he's like, these are the last words, and I need to. They're going to be embedded on my heart for the rest of my life. So something involving that where this defines who I am defines my, being a hero. So I feel like that would have been meaningful, because then it kind of passes on that mantle, that heavy mantle to Peter. But
see, I would have loved this, because you could have done multiple things with that. This needs to be the end, because we're just over an hour now. But
okay,
maybe not my words specifically. I don't mean to say I'm going to close this, but
let's just say it would be a stark contrast to what the film did.
Yeah, but you could have
contrast.
Okay.
You could have two really cool moments there, because yes, you could have had it where it's like it recreated the trauma of Uncle Ben dying, and you have Tony Stark with, like, it would be still cliche, but they set up him and Pepper getting married or having been married and possibly talking about kids and everything, and Tony dies right there as well. That creates a sad moment. But then one things that he could have passed on is like Cap's shield is so and so placed, and so like somehow you could have Peter show up in the next film with giving Captain America his shield back, which would be kind of ironic from Civil War, where the first time they met, he stole his shield.
Flip
it. That would have been really cool.
Approach.
But I don't know. Anyway.
Not a bad. Yeah.
That would have been really cool. Anyway.
Oh well.
We'll see. So.
Sounds good.
Those were. Yeah, I kind of wish that would have happened, but I'm like, we'll see what Marvel does with the second film, because there's a lot to be.
I feel similar to not as badly, but I feel similar to Infinity Wars as I did about Last Jedi, where it's kind of like, okay, there's some things that I think could have been done better and would have made it, like, for me personally, I would have been more of a fan of it.
Yeah.
Still a great film, still a fantastic setup for what's going to come next, I think.
That's right.
Well, I'm still like thinking, I don't get, like, Infinity War I thought was the be all end all for really Marvel, or not Marvel, but just like this whole journey with the Avengers. Because we have Avengers 4, and I'm like, okay, is Thanos not defeated after Infinity War? What's coming next in Avengers 4?
Well, the Infinity Wars is still going on.
I know, but I'm saying, like, you have part 2, and I thought part 2 is when Thanos is defeated, and basically this whole arc that Marvel's been building for 10 years to Infinity War is complete, because the Infinity Stones have been collected or destroyed, whatever, and then we just have our spin-off films from here on out, so I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, time will tell.
I don't know. I don't know who the one thing I worry about is if Marvel continues with film industry, not really comics as much, and they're still building comics, but they're not doing as much as they used to. But who's going to be the big baddie in the end? Like, Thanos is like the villain of Marvel.
Only biggest.
I mean, you have Lady Death and Galactus.
Yeah, I was gonna say Galactus would be another one. So it'd be interesting if, I don't know if it'd be kind of be cheesy, but to have this whole team up with Thanos to take down Galactus, because like he'd be the only person who could challenge, be a threat to Thanos.
Yeah.
And Thanos.
I think they could pull it off. Yeah, if they keep Thanos alive at the end of Infinity War somehow.
Because you were introduced to Dormammu. Thank you.
Dormammu.
In Doctor Strange, but I don't think that's going to be. I don't think that would be much of a influence. But still, there's other beings out
It's
there.
kind of funny, like, yeah, there's this massive, like, all-powerful god being that's bigger and more powerful than Thanos out there. It's like, I just did a time loop on him. It's cool. He's good. He's down there.
And now Thanos is around, so now he's just going to be stuck in another time loop. He really has it bad.
So
yeah. So.
Well, that will conclude.
Yes, that will conclude this one. So
Avengers
definitely,
Infinity War Part 1.
If you have not seen it, which like half the world has seen it already, or has bought tickets to go see it, it seems like. Then
again,
yeah. If you haven't, go see it. It's fantastic. So
don't make it an infinity till you see it.
Puns.
There you go.
All right. Well, you guys have a good night. Jerry Andrew,
David Leffler,
Adam Rice.
Hey, I didn't go last this time.
There we go. And we'll see you guys next time. Have a good night.